Good evening. This is the Thursday, April 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the Morro Bay Harbor Advisory Board. We're meeting in the Veterans Memorial Building on Surf Street in Morro Bay. And Dana McClish, one of our members, is traveling this evening, so he will not be here. Lynn Meisen is not with us right now. We're not quite sure why, but we do have a quorum nonetheless. So we'll proceed. And first we'll have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. So a pledge of allegiance. Cherise, can you help us? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item is Chair, Advisory Board Member, and our liaison announcements. We'll begin with our liaison, Ms. McPherson. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here early today. Yes, I just wanted to remind everyone that we are having our second goals session 2 weeks from today, Thursday, the 18th of April, 6 o'clock at the Community Center. And so we're going to try to prioritize some of the many things that are on the agenda, too many for our staff to accomplish in the next year. So you're all welcome to come. The public is welcome, and I'd like to see as many people as possible out there. So thank you.
Date and time one more time, please.
April 18th, 6 o'clock at the Community Center.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Cherise, announcements? Okay. Mark?
None at this time.
Okay. Jeremiah?
Yeah, just recently I just wanted to announce that about a week and a half ago or so, the Department of Fish and Wildlife announced that they would be closing Dungeness Crab April 15th. It'll be ended this year, and that's a couple of months earlier than normal due to whale interactions and so forth. The fishing industry has been working very hard the last few years in conjunction with NGOs and the Department of Fish and Wildlife to solve these situations, and they're currently working very, very hard, as you can imagine, but they're going to lose a couple of months this season.
If you know, how did the quota this season compare with last season's quota?
As far as the landings go, we won't have that information. It'll be
No, the quota. So there is no quota. It's a calendar season.
yes,
Without regard.
correct,
Without regard to poundage.
correct.
Thank you.
And also, everybody who doesn't know, a lot of people do, that rock crab season opened up last weekend, and it's been very busy at the launch ramp, as Gene just mentioned here a minute ago. And salmon will be opening next Saturday, not this Saturday, following Saturday.
Okay. Thank you. Gene?
Well, the tide goes in, tide goes out, tide goes up, tide goes down. And lots of people on the Embarcadero. They go north, they go south. And it's been a very good week, the last month or so on the Embarcadero. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. That takes us to, we do have some other things, but I notice that we have quite a list of them in the staff report, and I'm sure the harbor director will get to those in good order here. So the next is public comment period. It's public comment for anything that is not on the agenda or any agenda item for which folks are not able to stay. Any public comment? Ma'am, please come forward and speak your mind.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Wells, and I'm the Executive Director of Morro Bay Harbor Festival.
And we have Don Doubleday back here. We're coming to just talk to you because we want to seek approval from the advisory board, as well as probably the city council if we need be, to move our festival event. In the last 4 years that we've had our festival down at the Embarcadero, we've had a range of complaints based on different businesses, and as the alcohol zoning has become more and more increasingly difficult, when we first started, the city backed us up in this and we had a free alcohol zone. Now, because of ABC regulations, we are required to actually zone in and fence all that area, which requires a lot more separation between the Embarcadero and the businesses, which more and more over the years we've had complaints. So this year, we want to go back to a 2-day footprint. And so what we're looking to do is try to seek approval to get the Maritime Marine lot over there and to try to put our festival over there for a 2-day event. We understand that you guys have already allotted it for boat rental, but we'd like to be able to see about working around that, as well as working with you to show you what we can actually do with that site area, which we think would be an excellent festival site to do. It's easy fencing, easy security, less traffic problems due to the whole Embarcadero, more free walking. And I can let Don Doubleday, he wanted to kind of explain a little bit more to you if you'd allow me to do that. But that's, we just wanted to introduce that to you. Right now, we currently have a contract, sponsorship verbal with Trident Winds, Castle Winds, and ENBW, I always get that name, their German partner, to do an Oktoberfest themed beer garden. As well as at the Harbor Festival, we are going to be doing a environmental innovative technology tent. We wanted to be able to display their project, as well as other people in the county to display these projects to promote what we do. But our main goal is also to bring in tourism, as it's always been a concern to try to fill in the beds. One-day festivals can bring people in the day, but it doesn't necessarily keep them overnight, and we'd like to go back to our original footprint, and that's kind of where we're seeking that. We wanted to just let you guys aware of what we're looking to do. So it's something I'd like to introduce Don Doubleday to maybe explain a little more, if that's okay, to just tell you a little bit of what we're looking to do.
Okay.
Thank you, Cheryl. About 4 years ago, we moved from the north end of the Embarcadero. We were pretty much forced to leave that area. We were cutting off half of the Embarcadero, and we were putting fencing in front of all the restaurants, and it was a very unpopular site. And so we tried something new. We moved down to the Embarcadero, and we had an arrangement with the city that agreed that we would have an alcohol-free area, that we wouldn't have to fence it. And this worked really, really well. We're not a big alcohol event. We're more of a family event. But alcohol is unfortunately one of the ways we make money. This last year, we were told that we would have to fence the entire perimeter of the event. We had just one small area with alcohol, and we were required to fence that off, and due to the fact that that's all we had, we lost a lot of money. Also, we're looking to bring in some headliner bands, and in order to do that, we need to charge admission. To charge admission, we need a gate. And we've talked to the businesses on the Embarcadero, and they are adamant they don't want another repeat of the Avo Margarita Festival just a month afterwards. It's really uncomfortable for the businesses to have a fence put up between them and the event. So back in 2010, we had been looking at the power plant as an alternate site. And this year we're coming back, since it's pretty much empty, and suggesting that we could possibly use that. Unfortunately, I know you're renting a portion of it out for boat rental, and it's something that we would have to work around. But boats are part of the harbor, and I don't think it's such a bad ambiance, and I think we can work a deal with it. But we're not talking about just the inside portion. We're also talking about the parking lot in front of it, all the way down to the driveway in front of Frankie and Lola's. So we would use that entire parking lot on the outside and the inside portion. 2 areas. The outside area would be free. It would have kids area, and it would have some nonprofit booths out there. Inside would have the music, the alcohol, the food, and that would have an admission in order to get in. So we're talking about segmenting 2 different areas. It's also very convenient because we use the storage area that is right beside there, which is where all of our stuff is. So rather than having to haul everything all the way down the Embarcadero, we're right next door. So it looked like a perfect idea. I don't know what we have to do to get permission at this point. I've asked Eric. I've talked to the Public Recreation Department, and I've talked to the City Council, and we're going to continue with that process. But we felt it was only right to come and talk with you guys and let you know what we're thinking about and welcome any feedback from you guys.
Okay, very quickly, before you step down, Don, step away, what are your target dates and how much of the triangle lot are you interested in using?
Well, we are on the 5th and 6th of October. We want to use 2 days instead of 1. 1 day just isn't enough. We just can't get the motels full. We can't get the businesses active. We can't make enough money to make it feasible. So 2 days.
Our fee would be under $5.
We're talking about an admission of $5.
And how much of the triangle lot, please?
As much as we can. We could fill the whole thing up, but we'll take what we can get. We would like enough to be able to put a stage in there and a dance area and seating, and have our food and alcohol booths in there. So as much as we are able to get.
Okay.
We have not completed a map.
We understand. We understand.
What?
We understand.
Okay.
We gotta roll.
I gotcha. Thank you.
But thank you. It was very clear. Thank you.
We're going to let you go. Thank you very much.
Okay, you bet. Okay. Brings us to A1, consent calendar, approval of minutes from the Harbor Advisory Board meeting held on February 7, 2019. We have any corrections or comments? Seeing none, motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Carries. Thank you. That brings us to B1, which is the Harbor Department status report. And would you, Eric, in your status report, would you please include what the department has in mind to do moving forward, if anything, with the relative to the presentation that was just made for the Harbor Festival?
Sure, not a problem there, and I'll cover that first because I'll probably forget once I get through the rest of the list. So, as you know, we got council approval to put that boat storage program in place. We implemented it, and was it late last year, maybe early this year. Original plan was to fence about half the lot. The estimates I got on that were $16,000 plus a little bit, and having a little bit of sticker shock and not knowing exactly how much space we were going to use, we elected to just put pilings and kind of those plastic piles and put a border around it and see what we'd get. Well, we've got 4 or 5 boats and a little bit of interest with some folks storing crab gear and other stuff in some of the corner spots. So some of the feedback, a fair amount of the feedback we've gotten from folks have been that for the price, they feel that they would like to have a little more security than just pilings that you can step over. So I've set my staff and did a little bit of research, and for somewhere about $2,000 we can get some temporary fencing in for the rest of this year. So I'm going to put up some temporary fencing and use about half of what we've got there now. So if you go in past the Maritime Museum, Morro Bay Landing's got a storage and lay down yard and work yard right there in the corner that's in our little zone, and then on back is the rest of our spot. So we're going to take about half of the area that we've got cordoned off right now, the back half, the northeast corner, put temporary fencing around it, and see how our usage goes and see if it goes up, see if that attracts more customers. We're going to do some more advertising, and it'll give us roughly 20 to 22 spots, depending on what size boats we get in there. So that'll open up the rest of that. Bob Fowler at Morro Bay Landing should be done with where he's working with all that gear and equipment by this summer, at the latest, late summer at the very, very latest. So by October, I'm certainly sure he's going to be done and out of there. So we should be able to open up the rest of that area for potentially the Harbor Fest if they end up going there. And then we'll be in the back part. So that's our plan as of this morning.
Okay. Well, it's city property. The Harbor Department is involved in managing the parking portion of that property, or maybe all of that property. The Harbor Advisory Board, with the exception of its interest in a marine services facility there and responding to whatever the Harbor Department asked it to respond to regarding potential uses or fees in that space, we don't have a lot to do with that. Do you anticipate that we're going to need to agendize something at some point in time?
I don't think so. The typical process for Harbor Festival and other events, as you probably know, and has always been with Harbor Festival, is the public area use permit process, the PAUP process, which involves most department heads or seconds in command and police, fire, and we all come to the table. And we just had a meeting this week earlier where the issues are discussed. Project or event proponents come forward with their layouts and their designs and their plans, and Miracle Mile run to the pier, rock to pier, all that stuff goes through that process. Harbor Festival's no stranger to that, so that I would foresee is still being the process. We're starting to look at that in that group meeting setting. Those meetings are, I want to say twice a month, but at least once a month right now. So it goes through that process, and all of the departments weigh in on what the potential issues are. As far as we're concerned, Harbor Festival used to be on both sides. It used to be on the water side of the parking lot of Embarcadero, and then it was also over as an event on the Front Street parking lot up to about Frankie and Lolo, so that they still had all their business parking, and there were activities over there. And then in the last probably 10 years that it was down at the north end before it moved to the south, they moved out of the Front Street lot from an activity standpoint and used it for parking and vendors and staging and everything else. So it was still used by the festival, but not as event space. So they're looking at now moving all across the street in the Front Street lot and the Triangle lot. And given, I think, what we're going to try and do with the trailer boat storage and shrink that area up and see if that helps our usage a little bit and get our revenues up, that opens up. It will open up as much space as we can to the Harbor Festival to be able to move in there. I don't see any issues with them moving there if that's enough space for them. They're going to have to, I would assume, pull off from about Frankie and Lola's north, because they don't want to block the parking over there for those folks and all those businesses. So that could be a potential issue. But now you've also got those new rental units, those new vacation rental units right there too, right in the middle of that site. So even though I believe they've got their own parking on site, it's still potential issues that we'll have to look at. So we're moving forward with it, looking at it in the public area use permit process. So to answer your question in a shorter manner, no, I don't think we need to bring it back to the Harbor Advisory Board. It's not like they're going.
Have they made application?
I don't believe they have yet. They're just coming to us with these maps. They've come to Kirk up at the Recreation Department, whose department runs the public area use permit process. So he's starting to vet it to the different departments. Came to us as well. So we're starting to get it formulated, because until they get a sort of a green light to go forward, they're not going to be able to submit a application, or shouldn't submit an application, because they need to know where they're going to be.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So the rest of the status report. Start off with the usual statistics. 19 emergency responses. Can't say I've got any real crazy ones to talk about. Of note, the spring winds that have popped up here pretty suddenly a couple weeks ago. We had one day that we had a couple gusts up into the 70s out of the northwest, which is fairly unusual. So that created a little bit of havoc on the bay when the wind was blowing 30 to 40 all day long. But most of them have been wind related. 92 calls for service, 38 assisted by other agencies. Those are going to start rising now that we've got state parks going over and doing the snowy plover monitoring over on the Sandspit. 16 enforcement actions and 12 weather warnings, including 3 hazardous bar days, meaning large breaking waves in the harbor entrance. Jeremiah, you mentioned rockfish season open, recreational rockfish, which I'll probably reiterate again, but I do want to throw out there, I believe we've got a pretty big swell, late winter swell forecast coming in this weekend, and now that we've got rockfish season open, people just need to be aware that the harbor entrance may not be a good place this weekend. So contact us, contact the Coast Guard, look on the internet. There's Surfline webcams, although a couple of them are down today. Surfline webcams, there is a webcam that is at Coleman Beach restroom and looks right at the harbor entrance, so you can see what's going on. So, and the Coast Guard posts on the city's website as to what the conditions are. So just be aware of the conditions. They're kind of in that in-between zone where fishing seasons have started and we've still got big winter swells potentially coming. So just want to make sure everybody's safe out there. We've been working on cleaning up and prepping the aquarium lease site for occupancy. Central Coast Aquarium at this point, if you've been watching that process, and I reported on it a couple meetings ago, they are moving forward, the city's moving forward in partnership to see about a fundraising effort to see if they can get the necessary funds raised to get construction funding and not go with the USDA loan. And part of that was not going into the current aquarium space now on an interim basis, just because I think it's going to be too much time and effort and funding of a distraction for them to go into there. So we're looking to rent that out. Talking with the Chamber of Commerce on potential issues or potential uses. We've talked about doing some pop-up rentals in there. So we're in there cleaning things up and trying to secure the dock space for rent as well out in the backside. So we'll be working on that and hopefully get something open here in the next month or so. Back in mid-March, we had a conference here in Morro Bay that's been ongoing here for probably close to 10 years now, off and on, called Rescue Con. It's K38, which is the company that does our jet ski rescue training, puts it on. It's a couple weekend conference where they bring in folks from really around the world. Come on in, Lynn, don't be shy. Folks come as far away as Portugal, Italy, Spain, boy, I'm sure there's a couple others I'm forgetting, England, to attend this conference where they both do normal conference stuff and get seminars and training, but they also have on-water training as well. So we sent a couple folks to that, and great event to bring folks into town and see what's the latest and greatest in the water rescue world. We did our beach lifeguard tryouts back on March 17th. Included a swim and a run, swim, run, a paddle. Got some good prospective new folks. We don't need a ton of people. We've got a decent amount of returning guards this year, but we are going to be hiring a few. So we've got several great new candidates that we'll be putting through our lifeguard training academy, which occurs May. Should be over 3 weekends in May. I think it's about mid-May into early June is when our training academy ends. So that should be starting up and getting going here pretty soon. We just see some different folks in our reserve ranks. Our wording here, I think, got a little funny. Our 2 reserve patrolmen, Dave Muff and Matt Ponder, were removed from reserve patrol ranks. They weren't really removed. They decided they didn't want to work anymore, couldn't work anymore. They had other priorities, and so they've moved on of their own free will. We didn't remove them from our ranks. They've just moved on. But we do have some new folks. Dax Thies, Joel Craighead, Kevin McCall are all, and Adam Loans, who you'll see, who's been a lifeguard with us for a couple of years now. He also works up in Morby Fire. But those 3 folks are new in our ranks. So if you see them out on the water or out and about, say hi. Great young kids, and we welcome them to our staff. I spoke spring winds have really been blowing hard. We did have, I guess we had a potential suicide attempt of somebody swimming out into the harbor entrance right before sundown here a few weeks ago. The Coast Guard actually happened to be out there on their last light patrol that they do about every evening when the harbor entrance conditions are a little dodgy, and so they went out there and found this person and responded out there and got the person back successfully. Some potentially sinking commercial fishing vessel that unfortunately didn't sink. A few other boats requiring assistance in the bay, some medical aids, usual stuff with increased tourism season. We see more people on the water, more people on the bay, more people out at the rock. And again, kind of in between seasons, we still get big surf, but now it's tourist season, as you've seen with Easter break, and kind of being spread over about the next month. We've got a lot of folks around, so people need to be careful out there. Recent council activity. Council approved an amendment to the lease to the Rose's Landing lease site that really just did an adjustment to the parking agreement. We had agreed to lease some parking spaces to Rose's. Rose's is doing a pretty major project to convert all of the upstairs to, I want to say 10, but it might be 12 hotel rooms. They've had various restaurants over there since their inception, none of which were really long lasting because upstairs is a difficult place to do a restaurant. You just don't get a lot of foot traffic, so he's converting everything up to hotel use upstairs, visitor serving, which will be a good change. It'll be a good revenue generator as well, and hopefully be a little more successful. And to have a hotel, as you know, most hotels would like to have parking for their guests, so the city agreed to lease some spaces up on the city's lot up behind D'Estacio's, up on Pacific and Market, up on the hill. And so those will be dedicated by lease to Rose's Landing for them to do either valet system or a self-park system up there. And so we had to do some adjustments to the lease because we got some wording a little bit not quite complete in the original lease agreement when we approved the lease agreement last year. And so we did a few corrections on the lease, and so everything should be good there. And also on March 26th, we reported on our CMANC Washington, D.C. week, which we did here back in March as well, I think, shortly after I got back, so don't need to repeat any of that. Any questions on any of those? Upcoming events. Jeremiah, you mentioned recreational rockfish season is open. This weekend, opening day of recreational salmon season. Haven't heard any incidental stories yet. If anybody's been seeing anything out there, have you?
Down in Port St. Louis, my boat's hauled out down there, so I was talking to one of the fellows down there, and they had seen a sea lion tossing a very nice looking salmon around. So there was one at least.
There was one.
So hopefully there'll be, hopefully there'll be some fish here and it'll be a good season. And there's plenty of feed around, so it looks good out there.
Yeah. With the wind, that stirs up the feed as well. It gets things
One of the things, if I might go on just for a second, that I'd hope you include, you probably have it in your schedule there, but I was hoping to be able to assure that the commercial salmon fishermen would have a possibility of ice by the opening day, which we hope will be probably May 1st. We're hoping for it.
Right as of today, the company that's redoing the refrigeration on the ice machine is going to be here April 22nd, and they anticipate a week to get it up and running. So that sounds like that timing is just about right. So hopefully they'll get it full and have plenty of ice.
I wonder if there's any chance that if they have a hole in the schedule that pops up, they could begin.
Yeah, we'll ask. We can ask them.
It wouldn't hurt just in the event.
Yeah, I know
it's unlikely, but it would sure be nice if there was a little leeway to get the machine turning for a couple of days before.
Get the bugs worked out.
Yeah, it's pretty important.
We will contact them. I know a lot of they ordered the parts back in, I want to say January, but there's a fairly long lead time on it, and that's why it's taking a little bit longer. I think then they've got to work it into their schedule. But most of the delay was in them just having to get all the parts. It's not something you just pull off a shelf.
How much ice, if any, is stored?
No, I don't think they've got any in there
None?
currently.
It's all on demand?
No, there's 35 tons.
35 tons?
That they have in there now?
No, the machine has the capacity.
Oh, it will store 35 tons,
For
yes.
35.
So, and can the delivery system function while the compressor's being serviced?
No, and right now, I believe the ice machine's down. It's
Yes,
it's
correct.
currently down. So
period.
There is no ice, so we're in a very desperate situation
Okay.
for the guys. Limit them severely.
Yeah. I'll keep you updated on that, and don't hesitate to ask me, but we'll get a hold of the company and see if we can get them in a little earlier, see if they can come in sooner. This weekend, the 16th annual citywide yard sale. So if you're looking for bargains in Morro Bay, and I think that sometimes even bleeds over into Cayucas and Los Osos, they start doing a little bit of their own. So all over town, everyone does yard sales. So if you're a yard sale person, now's your weekend. Also this weekend on Sunday is our annual Blessing of the Fleet with several local Padres coming down to the North T Pier. Starting about 12 o'clock, 12:30 is when the actual blessing starts, but some folks show up a little bit early and we do some landside blessings and then get them, the Padres, on our boat and Coast Guard boat and go through the bay and bring them around to the different commercial boats or others that want to have their boats blessed. So that's always been a great event. So North T Pier, 12:30 to 3 is when that starts. Coast Guard on April 20th is doing an open house to thank the community for all the great support and outreach and donations that were given during the government shutdown back in January, February. They're doing a barbecue open house. They're going to be doing boat tours, station tours. That's from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock on April 20th, and we'll be joining them with that as well and doing tours of our vessels and our facilities as well, although our office may not be quite as exciting as theirs. April 20th, 26th to 28th is the Morro Bay Kite Festival. Scheduled again for 2 days out at the Rock, April being typically a windy month. Don't expect anything different, but we'll see how that goes. So that's always been a great event. And that's all day at the Rock on the 26th and 28th, 26th to the 28th. Cruising Morro Bay Car Show. I don't know what year this is, but it's got to be pushing 30 years, if not more. So that is May 2 to 5 in Morro Bay. And I believe Friday night they typically do a rally through town, and then all day Saturday, most of the day Sunday, so look for that. May 11th, Miracle Mile for Kids fun run from Morro Bay to Cayucas. That usually starts mid-morning. So again, that's May 11th, so look for that if you want to join that event. It's a great fundraiser to help kids. May 18th, Safe Boating Day and open house at the Harbor Department. So May 18th is California State Safe Boating Day. And we're going to have an open house at our Harbor Department and probably doing boat tours and other stuff as well again on that day. So 10 to 2 on May 18th. May 27th, and Jeremiah, if you got anything more to add on this, the Lost at Sea Memorial Ceremony, 3 p.m. at the Cayucas Pier to memorialize and remember those lost at sea. So that's May 27th up in Cayucas, 3 o'clock.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And also, they usually have a flyover. Hopefully, we'll have that this year. It's right now up in the air with funding, but hopefully, we'll have it. Yeah, it's a nice time to just take 45 minutes out of the day off the beach and away from the hot dogs and everything else, and just remember what the day's for.
Yeah.
And then you plenty of time in the day to go back to the goodies and snacks.
And they usually, I think they have a color guard, agency color guard, Marine Corps, Navy, Coast Guard. So yeah, great event. And finally, and we're getting out there a ways, but June 29th, save the date, second annual Marine Swap Meet. We'll be doing that over in the Triangle lot. So come rent a space, bring your stuff. Got to be marine related, can be boat related, can be fishing related, surfing, kayaking, whatever. Just got to be marine related. Mermaid, is that what you're... it just needs to be marine related. So a great little swap meet to come buy and sell stuff over at the Triangle lot. Any questions on any of those? pending HAB recommendation stuff. I'm just going to give if there's any changes on anything, unless somebody has a question on something. Boatyard, number 3, we'll talk about in the boatyard item.
Is there any change with regard to the state park and the Marina Cafe and that?
No, I'm waiting on the district superintendent to give me a date when the Sacramento folks want to come down here, get on the phone, or I'll even go up to Sacramento at this point, and put together a meeting. So just waiting on them. Again, boatyard, I'll get to that when we get to that item. The budget committee, I could cover number 4, but I'll cover it here. Consultant update to the cost allocation plan and the city's master fee schedule. That is well underway. I've got a draft cost allocation that's pretty far along, and master fee schedule and impact fee stuff. So when we get to the budget item, I'll give you a little more details on that, because I'm going to give you a little outline of the budget when we get to that committee report. But otherwise, that's going along well. Master fees, I mean, it's the company's doing is mostly a one-man band, so it's taken a little bit longer than anticipated. We're getting the cost allocation and impact stuff, I think, done and out of the way first. Master fee is going to come later. We're probably not going to approve a new master fee plan until after the fiscal year starts, just from a timing standpoint, so we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, it's moving along pretty well.
So the draft allocation study, is that being circulated through the city now? What's the process?
Yes, so the process was departments all get interviewed by the consultant, lay out where their personnel and focus goes in terms of where their costs are. Consultant has been coming here about probably once a month, maybe. He's down in Southern California, maybe twice a month on some months. Working mostly with department heads, but department heads then work with staff. And I had Lori and Becca on most of my meetings and still do. And so we identify what the consultant's basically got is draft materials. Essentially what we look at is the 3 within our department are sort of what I call the business lines, where we generate revenues: leases, slips, moorings, launch ramp, and how much time and staff time and materials and whatnot are dedicated to those different business lines. And then so the costs will be laid out against that, and then put in an overall plan. Similarly, with all the other departments, they do the same things. In terms of where their time and effort goes. And for instance, community development may spend 3% of their time and effort staff-wise on the harbor department. And so through multiple factors and various overhead allocations and all sorts of stuff that I can't even begin to explain how it would work, because I'm not a cost allocation plan developer. A number pops out at the end and it says, okay, for the harbor department to get their services from community development, the cost is $12,200 per year or whatever, as I'm making those numbers up. But that's basically how it works. And so the draft numbers come to us. I've, as a department, have looked at it, looked at the different charges that they're proposing for the harbor fund. There's some detailed breakdown on them that we can look at to see how they were derived and what the measurement metrics are, and there's been a number of them where we question and there's adjustments made. If we say, hey, wait, that doesn't look right, that's too high, or that one's missing, or that shouldn't be charged to us or whatnot. And so there's a little back and forth sort of negotiation that happens. And eventually the draft plan becomes the final draft plan and eventually goes to the city council to be approved.
And what is the target date for that?
I do not know that.
Okay.
And I would not guess. The plan, it's fairly well along in draft form because we've been using it for our budgets, which we just submitted yesterday, our first round of draft budgets to the finance department. So it's pretty close to being finished. But eventually it needs to be in final draft form, but I don't know when that ultimately goes to council. assume part of the budget process, because the numbers will get incorporated into the budget. Council will probably see the cost allocation plan as they move into the budgeting and approval process, and it'll be incorporated into that. Number 6, eelgrass, we'll cover that in the eelgrass ad hoc committee report. 7, working waterfronts, that's still all working through the general plan local coastal program update, nothing new there. And no, I've got, unless anybody's got questions, I have nothing new to report there.
Okay.
Or anything else to report.
Any questions for the director? Gene, Jeremiah, Lynn, Mark?
Based on your knowledge of the new fee schedules, et cetera, and the adjustments you made to the budget, does it appear your costs are going up or your revenue is going up?
Costs are always going up. Our cost allocation plan, our number that we're being charged, the number, I'm trying to figure out, when I got my initial draft budget from finance, it had certain numbers preloaded in, mostly the personnel and insurance and other stuff that City Hall handles. The other number that was preloaded in there was our cost allocation plan number, which I had a little bit of sticker shock for. Not bad, but my eyebrows perked up a little bit. In the last week or so that I've been working with finance and finishing up my budget, that number should be coming down because there are some numbers in the cost allocation plan that won't ultimately end up in the cost allocation, like vehicle replacement, for instance. They had a line item for planned vehicle replacement. Instead of driving a vehicle until wheels fall off and then fund them that way, start putting money aside like it should be. And so that number was in the cost allocation plan. Well, that's really not the cost allocation number. That's not a number that the general fund is incurring a cost, therefore it's charging us for it. It's a number that we want to set aside, so it's a separate bucket that it goes into, so it comes out of the cost allocation plan. So my sticker shock number is coming down somewhat. It's, I don't think, going to be far different than what it is today. The cost allocation doesn't appear to be, from the old one, from the existing one, doesn't appear to be way far, the new one doesn't appear to be way far above that or way far below it. It's not far off, surprisingly. Having gone through the process and sat through it with the consultant, and Lori can attest to this too, and we sat in several meetings and asked a lot of questions how they get to the numbers they get to. I'm reasonably confident that the things are being accurately and fairly, not reasonably, I am confident that numbers are being accurately and fairly portrayed. And just like we came up with estimates on how much time we put into different things, the other departments do the same things, and you've got to trust them to be, accurately coming up with their numbers and getting factored into the plan.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sharice? Eric, what's the current status of the Coast Guard building expansion, please? At the council meeting next week, I just had to think about that for a minute. The council meeting next week, and the agenda is approval of a supplemental lease agreement, which is an amendment to the Coast Guard's existing 49-year lease for their building to add on the 800 square feet they're adding. That's been a negotiated item over the last few months with the Coast Guard that basically memorializes the city's approval of them to do their project. So that hopefully will get approved next week by the City Council. And then they have already submitted their plans to Community Development. They probably did that starting 2 months ago, and it's slated for Planning Commission hearing on April something. I don't know the exact dates. Why does it require a Planning Commission hearing?
Because maybe hearing's not the right word. It requires Planning Commission approval. They still need to go through the city permit process and get concept plan approval and precise plan approval. Typically, you get concept plan approval. It goes to planning commission blesses it, goes to city council blesses it, goes to all the other regulatory agencies, and then comes back and you get precise plan. We're doing a combination concept precise at once. And that we've been working closely with coastal and coastal. It's a little different with the federal government. Federal government doesn't go to coastal commission traditionally like everybody else in the world has to. But NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, says that a federal project has to be consistent with state permitting and processing, and so they've got to go to coastal and get coastal's blessing, but not in the traditional sense of getting a permit. They basically do the same thing without a permit. So we'll be going to Planning Commission first. They'll be taking the Planning Commission first with a combination concept precise plan approval, and then to council shortly after that. I think maybe it's May for council. Maybe the second PC meeting in April and first or second council meeting in May, and that gets approved. They've got their supplemental lease agreement approved, and then they'll put it out to bid. Probably be soaking out to bid this summer, and they need to, by September 30th, have a contractor under contract to do the project, to keep their money and not lose it, and then go do the construction, which I suspect will probably be this fall or winter.
Okay, and and maybe you'll get to this during the finance and budget item, but what is the status, please, of state boating and waterways funding for the launch ramp improvements? It isn't exactly clear to me from the worksheet.
That funding is approved. That grant is approved. We got an extension of it into next year. It's for...
This is the 16, 17, 250,000 you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Same grant.
Yes.
And that is for engineering and permitting. That's to basically get the design set, the engineering done, and the permitting done. And I'm currently working on an RFP for engineering services to do the engineering part.
Are there funds in Boating and Waterways 1920 budget for grants that might work for the construction?
So the total project now, I believe, is about 1.9 million. 250,000 of that is this first part that we're working on. They don't approve the second part, the actual construction grant, until you get through permitting and engineering. So we get this out, we get the engineering and permitting done into early next year, and then apply for the next grant.
So that would be their 2021.
That will be their 2021 grant cycle, yes. So next spring, if all planning and engineering goes to plan, next spring we will apply for that grant. I would hope that, because through the engineering process, we check in with Boating and Waterways at 30% design, 60% design, 90 and 100% design. So as we're getting through that, I would hope that DBW, as they have, okay, Morro Bay's at 30%, all right, we've got to start thinking about the, $1.875 million left that we need to grant for this. And they start putting it on their list of projects to fund as you move forward to that, knowing that when you get your engineering done and permitting done, they're going to see the grant coming and be ready to move that grant forward. I can't say that that'll happen, but that would be the plan. So if it would move into that fiscal year cycle, it would be in the state fiscal year follows the state or the city. It's the July 1st fiscal year. If we got through that and that grant got approved, we applied for it in 2020. Next spring, April is typically the grant application time. Commission approves it, state approves its budget, which will been on time the last few years, and it gets in the budget, in the governor's budget. July 1, we're ready to go. At least we've got funding. Then we got to go out to
If.
bid. Yeah, there's a lot of ifs in there.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely.
Gene?
Eric, maybe my memory's wrong, But didn't Coastal Conservancy have some funding in the original boat launch area?
Yes, going before I was on the department, worked for the department, and you've obviously been around a couple of years longer than I have. Yes, we currently report to Coastal Conservancy our launch ramp usage numbers. We've been doing that forever, and that is because of a grant we received from them way back when. I think it was mostly for maybe fish cleaning station, but I don't remember. But anyhow, yes, your memory is not faulty.
Okay, anything else in the report? No? Okay, thank you, Eric. Thank you. So moves us on to B2, update on the status of Castle Wind LLC and the offshore wind energy generation proposal process off the Central California coast.
Okay, more talk. So, the big gorilla in the room right now with that process is the Department of Defense. The Navy lays claim to a lot of real estate off of our coast, and so far has indicated they don't want wind farms getting in the way of their training and radar and other stuff they can't tell us about that they do out in the ocean. It doesn't appear completely incompatible with their mission, but apparently there's some issues that they're trying to get ironed out. So as you might recall, the first step that BOEM had in this leasing process was to put out what they call the call, meaning they've identified 2 locations for potential offshore wind farms. One was Morro Bay in northwest here, about 30 miles, and the other was off of Humboldt. And so they put those areas out to call, and they basically said, hey, world, what are your issues? What do you want to see? What do you not want to see? Give us your comments about the federal government putting these areas out to lease. We as a city took a position through the city council and negotiating or talking with the city council, and the city council taking a position, wrote a letter to BOEM that had various issues that we wanted addressed. The primary one being taking into account the locals and how it affects the community, because the federal government in the leasing process doesn't really have to look at, except through the environmental assessment process, doesn't necessarily have to talk to the locals and see what the locals want or don't want. So we submitted several comments, take care of the commercial fishing fleet, make sure they're not run over in the process, bring community involvement into it, make the area large enough to make it financially feasible for a company and don't cut it up into little sections, and several other things. And so that call for comments, deadline was January 24th or 25th or 25th, something like that. And so all those comments were in. There was, Jeremiah, you said you read a bunch of them, but there's a good number received. BOEM is going through those, and it takes them about 90 days to publish a summary of what the comments are and announce what basically the comments were and how they may proceed with the nominations of those areas. Basically, they were called for nomination. So we'll see where those comments come up. So, end of this month, we should be seeing what the public commentary on that was. With the DOD issue, a large part of our time back in March in D.C. was spent with our congressional delegation, other congressional, not just Mr. Carbajal and our 2 senators, but other congresspersons and senators with our concerns on Department of Defense basically stopping this whole thing, because we as a city have taken a position that we want to see this project move forward because it could be an economic benefit to the city. And so we lobbied, and not just our congressional delegation, but we went to Department of Interior. I don't think Department of Interior has an issue with us urging this to move forward and DOD to get out of the way or go along with the process or not object to it and completely shut it down. BOEM wants to see it because the federal government stands to earn a good amount of millions of dollars in the leasing process, so they want to see it move forward. And so we lobbied Department of Interior, and we also visited Department of Defense back in D.C. and the Pentagon and made some good meeting contacts there. And so we are working still behind the scenes trying to figure out how we can make this DOD issue get resolved, as is Castle Wind and ENBW, their financial backer, and others that want to see this process move forward. So that's what's the big issue right now is trying to get this DOD issue resolved. And again, it was one of the issues was flight paths and existing established flight paths on and off the coast running through that area. Department of Defense didn't want to have to move them because then they'd have to go through the environmental assessment process on those, which they didn't do on the original flight paths because they were established probably back in the 40s or 50s when environmental assessment really didn't happen. And so those are the big issues that we're trying to work through with Castle and others and get DOD to come with, be okay with some sort of a compromise position, whether it's the arrangement of the wind farm itself or the numbers or location or spread or whatever. But that's what we're working through right now. And those things are all still pending. So don't know where it's going to go quite yet. From what we understood in D.C., and we haven't heard anything to the contrary yet, DOD doesn't have the final say. They can't say no, but obviously the administration, with DOD working directly for the administration, if DOD takes a certain position, it just depends on what the position the administration takes. If the administration takes the position that DOD is going to have the last say, then DOD may have the last say if that's what Department of Interior's marching orders are. So we'll see how that all goes. Hopefully something will be worked out. There was an article in the Tribune here a few weeks ago about the whole process that pretty well laid out what the issues were and did a good job of summarizing everything. So you can go look at that article and just go search the Tribune website for that. So we'll see where that goes. It could be several months for that to work out. The original plan with BOEM was to put the areas out to lease the end of this year or early next year at the latest. That's probably been pushed out now because of this whole DOD issue. If and when the DOD issue gets resolved, the next step that BOEM has to do is complete the environmental assessment under NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. That will be another process that has a lot of public engagement. It goes to the Federal Register, meetings, comments taken, just like any other public process that takes public comment. We'll factor in all that stuff and spit out some sort of a finding at the end and what the issues are and potentially how to mitigate them. That takes several months. But again, given all the Navy and DOD conflicts, it could be several months before that process even starts. So we're probably looking at 2020 before anything gets out to lease, if we're lucky. And again, we're engaged, the city's engaged, and Castle's engaged with DOD and others to try and get past this, what these issues are, and get them on board with allowing something to happen out there and moving forward. So until then, so as we know, Castle has an agreement with the city that the council approved here a few months ago. Until Castle has a project, there's not too much further. There's obligations or responsibility the city has under that agreement, which we are currently doing now. We're working with Castle and getting the word out and working with the different regulators and DOD to try and resolve these issues. So we just continually to happily work along with Castle and hopefully get this DOD thing resolved, and then the process goes out to BOEM bid, and we see where it goes from there. Any questions?
Therese? Mark? Lynn? Jeremiah?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we were at a meeting with Salud Carbajal, and he convened a meeting about 2 weeks ago, And present at that meeting was a gentleman named Steve Chung, and an associate with the United States Air Force. And Steve works at the Department of Defense as the Encroachment Program Director, Navy Region, Southwest Regional. And they were pretty adamant. They were very good. And just kind of laid the cards on the table. And part of the discussion was an area off Diablo Canyon. And they put that on a scale of ever happening, on a scale of 1 to 10 at 15. So, which did not sadden the fishing industry.
Well, just so I understand the scale, 1 is it's going to happen, 10 is it might never happen, 15 is...
10 is it will never happen.
Yeah, so 15
And 15 is
not in this...
not ever
Not
happen.
ever, under any okay, thanks. Just wanted to get the scale right.
Okay. And in any case, they did offer, they said that they're right now, they don't want to give up any area because they are trying to expand their area, and described a situation that many years ago it would take, if 2 boats were in the water, it would take a 50 miles separation to perform maneuvers. And today, that same operation with technology has increased the dimension to a minimum of 150 miles, which is fairly understandable. So they did offer up, and I have a chart here that shows the area, and it's very small. I don't know if we could put it on the board. But it is approximately 76 square miles, but it's moved into 12 miles off the beach, up just above Cambria. So that is the offer on the table from the Department of Defense currently. And as far as the ongoing, naturally, Castle Wind is still heavily involved. There are also other corporations, I believe 4 others, who have shown interest, even though the lease or applications for the lease have been submitted and ended because of this current delay. I'm not sure what the disposition of those will be during this delay, if they will allow them or not. But it seems like there is more. You would think there would be less with all the involvement of DOD, but there's more applicants that want to be involved. So that's, by the way, the area they offered up is not, it doesn't have the wind that the wind energy companies are looking for at this time. It's, these areas are not picked haphazardly, they're picked to identify the windiest areas. And this particular area that DOD has put 12 miles off the coast does not have the wind necessary to be not optimal. So.
Yeah, I think the current spot is 20-something miles straight off the coast of Cambria, and it needs to be in that 20 to 30 mile zone at least from the wind standpoint, because the closer you get, the less wind there is. So that's why they chose. Thanks for the comments about the Diablo Canyon or the Point San Luis area. My understanding of that was much the same, that, and again, because of DOD, the area off of DOD's position on the area off of Point San Luis was no way, no how. And the position on the Morro Bay one, because it's at the northern fringe of a lot of their testing ranges, the Pacific Missile Test Range and some other stuff, they were okay-ish with it, and that's why they're negotiating. And so that was my understanding of those. And then Humboldt, I don't think they've got any issue with it at all. That's the other spot up north. So we'll see where it goes.
Not to belabor this, Humboldt, the issue in Humboldt is the size of the project, because there's no room for expansion of whatever project they put in Humboldt. Humboldt has no connections to the grid. There's an aging power plant currently supplying power to that area, and they were hoping that the wind energy would take over where this aging power plant leaves off. But whoever does that job will have no room for expansion because there's no way to get the power to the grid. Presently, but yeah, it's. I'm sure technology will allow for it, but I doubt if the present technology would allow for expansion to the grid from there. That's coming from a fisherman,
Okay.
so I have no idea.
Gene?
Well, thinking about our current administration, and I think they're ripe for any kind of payola, so maybe that's the way to do it.
Tell us how you really feel.
Anything else before we move on? Okay. Thank you. With the board's permission, I'd like to swap C2 and C1 and start the business items with C2. Any objections? Okay. So C2 is an update from the Finance and Budget Ad Hoc Committee. Mr. Blackford is with us this evening, so please. You want to have him do the status report, or do you want to go first?
I was looking to ask staff to go ahead and give us their sort of status report, and then we could go through the spreadsheet for any highlights of additions and or changes to numbers that we can relate to from last year.
Sure. So, primarily, in terms of budgeting with the Harbor Advisory Board, as you know, we've been working mostly on the capital aspect of it all and looking at capital planning and capital costs and kind of prioritizing what we think needs to get worked on next, and depending on funding available, moving accordingly. So several years ago we developed these capital planning sheets. I've been revising them over the years. I've done some more recent revisions to them. My most recent revision was getting some updated costs on building docks and slips and plugging them in, and surprise, surprise, costs have gone up for what I originally estimated. I think my original planning sheets from probably 5 years ago had things at about $90 per square foot. Starting about 2 years ago, I think we upped it with working with the committee to 150 a square foot. Well, I'm up to 200 now a square foot. And that includes hard and soft costs, not just the actual construction. So plugging those numbers in eats up a lot of money. In our capital planning sheets have, beyond just docks and slips, they've got equipment and vehicles, and not just the slips that we rent and the piers that we rent, but our other facilities, public facilities, and there's a lot of, as we know, capital outlay needed out there to keep these facilities up to snuff that we don't have a lot of funding for. Currently in our accumulation fund is about $479,000, and this is our reserve fund for doing all these projects and programs. Once I updated my spreadsheets over the last month or so, came to pretty quickly realize, although we knew we didn't have enough funding to do very much, we've got even less because things are going to cost more. So with the Beach Street Slips project currently being the one in the hopper to do next, they're our oldest slips, most in need of replacement. Started looking at those and really realized with a couple other fairly small projects kept on the list, I needed to put some more money towards Beach Street, and there's really not enough to do both sets of slips, north and south. So I focused in on the north slips. Wish they were the smaller set, but they're not. They're the larger set, and they're the oldest, and they're most in need of replacement. And that includes all the electrical and water and everything else. So looking at about 445,000 total need for that set of slips. We've spent roughly 75,000 on engineering to date so far, so making up the difference to what we already on the budget, I'm proposing in this year's upcoming budget, adding another $155,000 to that project line, that capital project line. The next line item, capital project wise, and then I'll get into our bigger budget discussion to kind of lay it out how things are looking, and we'll see where we take it from there. Item 2 on the staff report is the ice machine. As I reported earlier, we're getting some major maintenance done on that, getting all the compressor and refrigeration equipment replaced on that through a grant from the Cable Committee. Thank you again, Cable Committee, for funding that. I had $35,000 in this year's capital fund for that. I'm not going to be needing all that. I'll probably be needing only about $10,000 to $13,000, so I'm squirreling away $14,000 on that, and going to propose to spend another, need to go to the City Council on that, hopefully later this month, to reallocate 20,000 of those ice machine dollars to paving the alleyway between Tognazini's dockside and the fish dock, which is a real mess. So I need to get that paved, and so what I'm proposing to throw at the ice machine next year is $20,000 towards ongoing maintenance. May not need it all, hopefully won't with all the upgrades we'll be doing on the machine, but need to play it safe and make sure we got the money set aside, because as Jeremiah said, I mean, that's a critical piece of equipment, and if we don't have funding for it, we don't have funding for it, so I want to make sure we got funding for that. And then item number 3, North and South T-piers, $50,000 in aggregate to do some relatively minor in scope scale repairs to both of those piers needed out of a couple engineering reports we've had done, and we'll be allocating that to the most urgent projects once we start looking a little closer at those. So if you do your math and add all those up, it comes to about $474,000, and what's in our piggy bank is $479,000. So what you'll notice is not on there, unfortunately, is the funding that we've had set aside and kind of carried over year over year towards the boatyard project. At this point, and we had 40 some odd $1,000 on there for doing the financial feasibility study. There was a line item that had been in our approved budget for a number of years, and we've been spending it down a little bit with some of the projects we've done with RRM and a couple others over the last 4 or 5 years. But at this point, I've pretty much made the executive decision within my department that spending $40,000 to $50,000 on a what-if project is going to have to go by the wayside to get some of these critical infrastructure projects done, unless something changes or we come up with additional revenue. Maybe this year's revenue will end up higher than next year's, and I'll go into the budget and talk about a little bit about that. But at that point, that's what I'm proposing to go forward to the City Council with, and see where we get. Any questions on that before I go on to a couple of years of budgets?
On the repaving of the alleyway there, are you planning on going from Tognazini's restaurant clear up to Morro Bay Landing project, or just part way?
So the Morro Bay Landing project, you're rearranging the corner there and then repaving that. There's somewhere in front of the Quonset Hut Ice House, there's a decent chunk of concrete that remains.
Yes.
I'm starting at
There?
that decent chunk of concrete going north to the next decent chunk
T-pier?
of concrete in front of Tognazini's dockside.
Okay.
So basically in front of Krill's and Tognazini's, that whole section through there.
Okay, without regard to the capital worksheets, we're just talking about the staff report that's been delivered so far. Questions, comments? Jeremiah? Lynn? Mark? Therese? Okay. Eric, as far as the Beach Street slips, a while back you told us that there was a pretty ugly surprise relative to electrical. Is that the resolution of that surprise included in the 445?
Yes, that's
Okay.
Yeah.
And the On the north and south T-piers, how old are those engineering reports that you mentioned reacting to?
South T Pier. I want to say 2016. We assessed the pilings for the Beach Street project with that project, with the South T Pier, and I believe that was 2016. North T Pier is older than that. North T Pier, and we did a major project on North T Pier in 2013. So that assessment was probably done in 2014. I think the South North T Pier was. So we did the assessment on that a couple of years before that. So probably 2012 or 13.
Is there any utility in incrementally updating those reports, or is the department comfortable with prioritizing the needs?
I'm comfortable prioritizing the needs identified in the existing reports now because those needs haven't fixed themselves or got any better. And given the other findings in the report, looking at the most urgent and necessary ones first, like I say, they've only gotten worse. They haven't gotten better. And so the other less urgent needs, while they're less urgent, I would trying to get the sort of ones that I would color in red now, and then the green and yellow stuff is going to have to wait till funding's available.
Okay. Two of you, let's keep going. Whatever's next.
So, looking at that, we're saying that we have basically going to finish the year with a $5,000 reserve fund, going from a $500,000 to a $5,000 reserve fund.
If we want to do some projects.
Yeah. Does the next year's budget appear that we're going to be able to replenish that amount?
So maybe that's what I should go into next, and kind of look at. I mean, this year's. Yeah, we're winding it up. We're April. We've got April, May, June in this fiscal year, and we're done. A big chunk of our revenues, 400-ish thousand, comes in July after the fiscal year's over, and our leaseholders tally up their gross revenues and proceed accordingly. So I don't know where we will end. This year's minimum rents are, let's say, a little better than last year's, but not by much, because we had some pretty significant lease changes this past year, most of which comes from the boatyard, where we had to spend a fair amount of mitigations there to deal with a seawall failure. And then we've got the closed aquarium, so we haven't been receiving any rent there. That isn't helping any, and so a couple negatives on the revenue side. So that's where we end there. I should probably pull out my projected stuff for this coming year and give you an idea of where I think we're ending.
And just to be clear, we're talking about fiscal 18-19. You're about to talk about fiscal 18-19.
Correct. We are, yes. I'll talk about where I think fiscal 18-19 will go. And it's going to be in very broad terms. And leases being our largest revenue source. Slip revenues are coming in as projected. Let me just go down. I'll go down the major revenue streams. Liveaboard services, other harbor services. That's just kind of a miscellaneous catch-all. Coming in about normal so far. We can do reports today and sort of amortize over how many months are left and figure out where we're at. Those are coming in fairly normal. And I'll get to harbor leases last. North and South T Pier coming in a little lower than we had anticipated. Those are $33,000 and $44,000 line items, so it's not the end of the world, but we'll probably be $20,000, $30,000 short on those. Mooring rental, that's a pretty known quantity. We usually come in right on that because we know how many moorings we have and what they get every month. Slip rental, same thing. We're pretty status quo on that. We're coming in right on target on those. Slip transient sublease, it's $47,000 line item. We're a little low. It can go up and down just depending on how many transient subleases we end up in. Some of it depends on the commercial fishermen and how many are gone and how many slips we've got to rent out. So it's coming in a little low, but not alarmingly so. And then a bunch of little miscellaneous items that don't really matter too much from a size standpoint. Launch ramp parking's coming in about where it should, about $30,000 a year. But leases, what I budgeted for in leases this year, in this current fiscal year, anticipated revenues was $1,532,000. Lori just completed a rent spreadsheet with things updated with last year's percent gross revenues, because we don't know what this year's are again. So assuming this year will at least be equal to last year, it'll probably be a little more because the economy's gone up a little bit. We're anticipating revenues of $1,542,000, so $10,000 more than what we budgeted. So flat for all intents and purposes. So no big relief there. So, and that's mostly due to CPI adjustments and whatnot that have crept up a little bit. And so even though boatyard and aquarium aren't generating what we'd hoped, looks like we'll still do okay, knock on wood. Any questions on that?
Okay, relative to what? FY 16-17? Or I'm sorry, 17-18? FY 17-18 relative to what?
Ask your question again. I didn't follow.
Sure. You said we're something like going to be pretty much okay.
Oh, so okay in terms of what we budgeted. In terms of lease revenues, what I forecast and put in my budget for this year and planned on spending against, we're okay. Assuming the percent gross revenues come in as they should, as we hope they will, we're $10,000 ahead on paper.
And okay, this is a question, not a statement. And okay means that you can cover. You anticipate being able to cover the harbor department's operating expenses.
Correct. Yes.
Period.
Yep. That's what I mean. Okay. It looks like lease revenues coming, like say that some of those are a little lower, but we'll see how the year ends. We've still got a few months to go and anything can happen. So that's where we are on 18-19.
So to answer the question, no, we're not replenishing the $500,000 that we're spending this year.
Not by any big number.
Thank you.
You're welcome. 1920. And Marlis, you're getting a little preview of the budget. Great, huh? 1920. So, and I'll start with the lease revenues on 1920. All of our leases have they all do now, I guess now that they've all got a CPI adjuster every year. Some years have gone down. 2008, after the economic crash, some of our lease minimum rents went down. But we're back on the upswing. And so the CPI factors that we use come from Department of Labor, and we get those in the springtime, usually March. And so Lori's gone through and they're all a little different. They all have different base CPIs that you calculate things against. So it takes a little bit of time to get it all put together. And so we got it all put together. And so we know what our minimum rents will be. And our minimum rents are up. So last year's minimum rents were $1,114,000. This year's minimum rents, $1,114,000. Next year's minimum rents, and these we know now because we're going to apply these factors to them. These aren't projections; these are actuals. $1,179,000. So a little better than last year. percent rents, because I don't know how we've done yet this year, and I won't know till July after the budget is approved. Typically what we do is we'll take last year's and apply a little, because that number is known now, last year's percent gross rents were $428,500. So I'll take that number and talk with finance and see how we want to multiply that forward, looking at sales tax trending and TOT and just seeing where the economy's generally going. And this year I was comfortable with, and finance was comfortable with, let's just take last year's and multiply by 1%, and which is probably about what I did for this year's. I took 17, 18, did the same thing. Hopefully things will come out a little bit better. And what I end up with is applying that to the minimum rents. And what I've put into my budget for this year for projected lease rents for next fiscal year is $1,606,000, compared to this year, hopefully coming in again at $1,542,000. So do your math. That's what, 60-something thousand lease revenues. Hopefully come in a little better. Now, if slip revenues stay as they are, and come in this year a little lower than I anticipated, 15, 20, 30,000, depending on how things go out, that obviously eats into that 60,000. So while we're still in the black, we're not in the black by a ton. So that's where we are currently with this year's budget, at least on lease revenues. And so and let me finish on this year's budget. For slip revenues, again, and mooring revenues, pretty status quo. The two piers I've adjusted down based on how we're performing this year. Tweaked my transient subleasing the same way. Liveaboard, actually, those fees have been doing a little better, not by tens of thousands, unfortunately, just by a few thousand. Tweaking everything a little bit. Adding into my budget, pretty standard stuff. Our directions from finance were everything's pretty well flat. Don't put any increases in there. That was a little more of a general fund marching order than a harbor fund, because we control our own revenue destiny, although we take those same marching orders. Little adjustments we've done here and there. A couple small projects to throw some funding at, Sandspit Emergency Phone and a couple others. Not putting any money towards vehicle replacement or building replacement, at least that's not what I'm proposing at this point. We end up with, at least on this budget, over expenses, about 22,000 revenues over expenses. So while we're potentially making more revenues next year, cost, and our biggest cost is, you're staring at two of them, employees. That's two of our biggest costs. Our employee costs of overall pretty flat. They haven't changed a lot. Electricity, water, those costs have gone up. Disposal, again, factor in a couple of small projects in here. We're looking at potentially ending the year, at least revenues over expenses projected about $22,000 in the black.
Does that take into account the priority items that are noted in the capital equipment schedule for 1920?
Yeah. That takes into account the capital equipment?
Yeah, you have priority subtotals equaling 39.7.
You're looking at the spreadsheets?
I am. Capital requirement spreadsheet.
Capital equipment, is that one you're looking at?
Thank you. Capital equipment, yes, thank you. Yes. For 1920.
And where's the number you're looking at, your bottom line?
You have priority subtotals, category by category. And if you add the priority subtotals up, they come to 39.7.
Oh, you're not looking at a line that's totaled. You're totaling this up yourself?
I am.
Okay. No, my operating budget does not have any of this in it, nor does my capital budget. Like I said, my capital budget incorporates the three things that I spoke of earlier: the ice machine, Beach Street slips north,
Sure,
and
I'm talking.
that's it on capital.
Okay, and I'm not, okay, all right, okay.
It's the only thing we're throwing money at for capital, with what I'm proposing to throw out.
And the reason I focused on that is because the capital equipment spreadsheet is, from my perspective, harbor operating expenses as a projected or needed or required or wanted, as opposed to infrastructure.
Yeah. And from a vehicle standpoint, which outside the boats, capital equipment is mostly vehicles. The funding I spoke of earlier going to vehicle replacement fund, that's where the vehicles would be paid for from. I should say, I'm going to make a slight correction. Sandspit emergency phone. I've got in my budget today, although I'll probably end up changing it because I understand the Friends fundraising effort to replace that phone is doing pretty decent. So I may be able to fund that from the Friends and not have to pull it out of my operating budget. So yeah, as of today, my operating budget does include $10,000 for the Sandspit emergency phone. And that's a capital equipment item. But I'll probably be pulling most, if not all, that off because the Friends are doing great.
Okay, but out of that 39.7, about almost 30,000 of that, or actually that's not quite correct, 25,000 give or take, is not related to vehicles. It's the boats.
Correct.
And a kiosk. So what I'm fumbling around at is trying to ask whether your projected 1920 revenue, as you very carefully and thoroughly described it to us this evening, does or does not address the priority items on the capital equipment requirement spreadsheet for 1920.
Does not.
Okay. So the projected net revenue of 60, which in terms of your total budget is,
I believe that was the revenue increase, but there was going to be some degradation due to increase in cost.
Yeah, correct. The 60.
oh, the
1,000.
60 wasn't a net?
That was 1819. That was 1920. Hopeful 1920. Over 1819 should end.
Just revenue, without regard to expenses. But you said
Correct.
But
Yes.
prior to that,
Yes.
if I understood you, that you said expenses. You anticipated expenses would be not significantly different than 1819, if I understood you correctly.
Expenses expenses are generally creeping up, and with a few other items I've put into the 1920 budget, on paper I'm not 60,000 ahead because my expenses aren't exactly the same as current year. They've gone up a little bit, but the net is a 20 some odd $1,000 gain, hopefully.
Yeah. So basically, if things go well, it's a break even.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Okay. The on the capital equipment spreadsheet, there are a number of grant-funded line items. What's the likelihood that those will come to fruition as they're embedded into this spreadsheet?
Well, there's two that I can already take off because I've Haven't completely updated the spreadsheet. They're on page 2, they're on priority 1s. They're the 2 in blue over in the column over to the right, the personal watercraft. We got grant funded for that from Boating and Waterways. And we just took delivery of those here a month or so ago. So those can come off. Other grant funded on there. Should we move forward from a boat standpoint, we're obviously going to be applying to DBW to fund whatever we can on boats. Vehicles, I don't think anybody's ever tried to get vehicles out of DBW. They only do boats.
I mean, in 2021, that amounts to $72,000, and that's why I'm asking what you speculate the likelihood might be, because I know there's no such thing as a certainty. So, with a grant.
Other than, and this isn't a grant, other than the Sandspit phone, getting Friends funding for that, their fundraising effort, I don't, and if I'm talking about boats, until I move forward with a boat project, I'm not going to apply for any grant funding. We've had discussions on our Patrol Boat 6.8, and that needs to move forward at some point in the not too distant future, but even with the alternative, some potential creative project on that boat, that's still multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if we're ending this year, next year at $5,000 in the kitty, there's not going to be any funding for that.
The grant funding that I'm looking at on this spreadsheet for 2021 relates to watercraft.
That
And that's what I'm asking about the likelihood thereof.
That needs to come off.
Oh.
We've got those. We got those personal watercraft.
On both.
You're looking at those two $12,000 items in blue.
I am on both. Yeah,
we got those. We applied for DBW this year, had some excess funding. They said, hey, do you need... Yeah, I know you applied. DBW had some excess funding. We applied and were granted $24,000 and change, maybe a little more.
Good thing. I misunderstood.
Yeah, we got 2 personal watercraft and a trailer out of that. So yeah, those are done. You can scratch those off.
All right. Okay. Before we move on to the next schedule, anybody have anything else on capital equipment? Okay. So let's take capital major maintenance.
So what we have here is the major maintenance requirements, and over the next 5 years, we're looking at $570,000, and it looks very heavily front-loaded from where we are
290
today. Yeah, we've got 290 in this year and 225 in the following, which says that those are right upon us, right? These are all ones and twos.
And so again, I'll just more for the viewing public, but just reiterate, these schedules are based on, I always call it if money were no object, based on the life of a particular item or when it should be serviced or maintained or given a major thing. So capital major maintenance, in other words, the North T-Pier, we're never, unless it falls over or drifts away or burns up, knock on wood, hopefully it won't, we're never going to replace the T-Pier. It'll just get a progressive series of major projects that eventually it gets replaced over time. All the pilings get replaced over time, everything else, but you never just go in and replace a pier and put a new one in unless you're trying to reconfigure it and do something completely different. So on the North T-Pier, on that list, again, if money were no object, we'd budget $200,000 in it this year, $200,000 in it next year, to put enough money away to be able to do a major project. Right now, I'm proposing out of my budget that I spoke of earlier to basically get the worst stuff that absolutely needs to get done and get it fixed this year.
So part of the reason we're doing this evening is not, just to be clear, is not to question the department or its budget capabilities or its planning capabilities. Quite the opposite. The department has been, and I'm speaking to the public now, the department has been gracious enough to allow the Harbor Advisory Board Budget and Finance Ad Hoc Committee to look over its shoulder while it does this work. This is its internal work product. And my personal opinion, and I would ask my other committee member to comment as well, this is not a wish list. This is prudent fiscal planning for major infrastructure on the city of Morro Bay's waterfront. So I was moved to say that because I felt it was getting slightly defensive, and there's absolutely no reason for that whatsoever. I mean, I personally am very pleased with how fiscally prudent the department is when it does this kind of planning. As Mark pointed out, the department is projecting prudently and reasonably, in my opinion, projecting that there's a $229,000 infrastructure need for capital maintenance. We haven't talking about replacement yet. We'll get to that in a minute. For fiscal 19 and 20. And between fiscal 19 and 20 and 23-20, as Mark said, is $570,000. And I would encourage those who are paying attention to this to reflect back on what the harbor director said about his projected revenue for 1920, which was revenue against known operating expenses, or certainly well-known predicted operating expenses, are basically going to be flat. So before we move on to the next schedule, anybody on the board have anything that they want to say about the major maintenance schedule? Gene?
Yeah, Eric, under the facilities there, what I do, most lease sites, the lease site owner is responsible for pilings, docks, things like that. But what I don't see is the city of Morro Bay is responsible, Harbor Department is responsible for the Tognazini docks and that area underneath there. And at some point, we're going to have to budget some repair work down there too. So that needs to be put in there somewhere. So.
Yeah, and we've had discussions in the past too on adding revetment in seawalls as well. As well, you wouldn't think revetment needs maintenance, but occasionally it does. Seawall wise, and I haven't gotten around to getting it on the schedule. Seawall wise, the biggest, most glaring one is down at the inn at Morro Bay. We own that is ours, and that thing is in terrible shape. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I need to add those.
Yeah, add a category.
Yep.
Okay, anything else from Charisse?
Yeah. As far as the bathrooms go, should they be part of maintenance and upkeep? And who does that fall on to?
Maintenance and upkeep on all of our public restrooms falls on the facilities department through the cost allocation plan. If a restroom were, like when the rock restroom was replaced, they didn't set aside the funding over a number of years. I believe they got some grant funding to do that. The recreation department did back when they were doing the city's capital projects or capital facility stuff. So that came out of a grant. But if, let's say the North T-Pier restroom falls down tomorrow, facilities doesn't have the funding to replace it. They're going to have to we're going to have to scare it up somehow. It would probably fall largely on us, but they pay for the general upkeep and maintenance of all the restrooms and parks and other parks, like Tylen's Park, the play structures, the barbecues, lights, all that stuff. That's all cost allocation, comes out of our cost allocation.
Okay, so let's move on to the capital replacement schedule.
Can you give us any insight into what additions you may have made to this from last year?
The biggest one was updating cost of dock slip replacement to a more accurate, up-to-date, and it was largely based on current projects in the bay from a couple of different leaseholders, so I've got good real-time numbers to have used on those. And so that's why the Beach Street slips numbers went way up. So anything on slips, North T Pier, my Harbor Patrol slips, I've got them at a little bit less per square foot, just because they're less utilities and less cost there because of the nature of them. We're a little different than our fishing boat slips. But the Dune Street slips, Lunch Ramp, Beach Street, they've all been updated with current numbers. So those are the big ones that have changed. Otherwise, North T Pier, the Park Pier, and the different street end docks haven't changed a lot.
Based on that, we're looking at, on this spreadsheet, about $2,858,000 over the next 5 years. And over these three spreadsheets, $4,245,000. Now, it appears at this point on a projected basis is going to be a shortfall over the next 5 years.
A little bit.
Yeah, just shy.
Just a little.
Okay.
Okay, on this particular, on the capital replacement spreadsheet, any other comments? So just to summarize for the public, as it relates to the capital replacement, which is not the same thing as capital major maintenance, capital replacement for harbor-related infrastructure for fiscal 19-20 through fiscal 23-24, the department is projecting $2 million, as Mark said, $2,860,125. And that money's not available currently. If we add, as Mark quite correctly did, the major maintenance requirements with the capital replacement, there's a combined unfunded liability, to repeat what Mark said, of approximately $4 million, and that does not include revetments, seawalls, or anything else. So those of you who enjoy the waterfront infrastructure in Morro Bay and are listening to this evening, we hope you are aware of this fact. So at present, this body, and I don't believe the Harbor Department either, is aware of any particular relief for this conundrum that we have. Okay, anything else on this item? Eric? Any final commentary on this item?
I don't think so. No, I mean, the only other budget-related thing to this is the boatyard financial feasibility, which we'll get into that report when we go there if we need to.
Okay, so we agreed that we would take C1 second. C1 is an update from the Boatyard Marine Services Facility Ad Hoc Committee, next steps in the Boatyard Marine Services Facility planning process. The ad hoc chair is not here this evening. He's asked me to report on committee activities, but prior to that, Eric, do you want to repeat what you already told us earlier or shall we move on to the committee report?
I'll repeat. I'm going to add a little bit to it if I can indulge you. So, budget-wise, starting 20 years ago, we're working on a boatyard project and had $50-some-odd thousand in the capital budget for that, and we've wheedled that down a little bit over the last 10 years on some of these initiatives we've done. And there was $40-some-odd thousand in change in there when we went out and did the boatyard financial feasibility RFP that the council authorized. Fortunately, we didn't get any respondents to that. As you know, we brought that back, had the idea of a couple of potential reasons why we thought we didn't get any respondents, made some changes to the RFP. Last meeting, I believe, recommended putting that back out. Ultimately need to run that back through the city council to authorize to put it out. But then in going through my budgeting this year, as I spoke earlier, there's $479,000 to go around, and there's some pretty critical infrastructure needs that I would really like to get out of the way. While I might get a little relief here and there, I chose to not put forward the boatyard capital budget this year to the city council, and so that's where I'm at on that. As you know, and I'll just throw this out there, and then let the ad hoc committee do your thing. And I spoke of the triangle lot storage a little earlier. If we redo our fencing there, we'll end up with 20-ish spaces, maybe 22 spaces. Generate if we fill them all up, and there seems to be some demand out there for some. Maybe storing some traps and crab traps and some other commercial gear as well. So we might be able to fill up some unused boat storage space with some of that kind of gear. Stand to generate about $20,000 to $25,000 a year on that. And the council's direction on that was to put it in its own kitty, take whatever expenses, costs are associated with managing it off, pay those off, and anything left over goes into a kitty to go primarily towards improvements to that lot. And an improvement to that lot could potentially be looking back at boatyard financial feasibility and trying to continue moving that forward. So I just want to throw that out there as a potential funding source for moving forward in the future, but that's going to take a while to develop. So I will leave it at that.
Okay, the committee chair sent a request out to the committee that it take a look at potential funding sources from the Federal Funding Handbook for Marine Transportation System Infrastructure, which I believe was provided to the committee chair by the harbor director. And so the chair has given the committee members their assignments to go through this handbook and to see whether there's any opportunity for federal funding that might be applicable to the Marine Services facility. And the committee is currently doing that. That's all we have to report. Questions, comments? Okay. C3, update from the Eelgrass Ad Hoc Committee. Lynn?
Lynn was here. Lynn is here. You didn't make a note on that.
Lori got it.
Oh.
But you're right. I didn't. That's quite true. Yeah.
Sorry for my late tardiness. For the Eelgrass Committee, we had the talk, and with Anchor QEA, we have the in lieu fee program summary, which is in your notes today. And since that time, I don't know if Eric has talked to Jack any more than that on this ILF program, because that was the next thing we were waiting for.
Could you define ILF, please?
Oh, in lieu fee program. Eric.
Is that my cue?
Yeah, it is.
So, and I'm going to work backwards a little bit, but as you know, Anchor developed a conceptual eelgrass plan that was slightly outside the box of the California Eelgrass Mitigation Program to see if we could develop something more Bay specific that would work better for us, that relied heavily on the National Estuary Program to be an active partner in eelgrass mitigation projects. Well, the NEP board looked at this a couple of times, and while they want to remain an active partner, they don't want to remain a partner that was responsible for mitigation and performance of mitigation projects and whatnot. They basically wanted to be advisory and assisting, and as much as they could. I'm not saying it's in a bad way, I'm saying in a good way. They want to continue to be involved, but they don't want to become regulatory or be responsible for mitigation projects. And so we asked Anchor to revise their conceptual eelgrass plan. We call it the matrix, which is that sort of that little box of responsibilities in the back of their plan to sort of incorporate an in lieu fee program process, which basically an in lieu fee process is something that is already regulatorily out there. It's one of the options excuse me, in the eelgrass mitigation plan with the regulators, and basically entails, from a simplistic standpoint, if you're a project proponent of some sort and you're going to have some sort of impact on eelgrass, there's some sort of a metric that calculates what the value of that is, and you pay that to an in lieu fee program to go towards related projects that might help eelgrass or whatever it is you happen to be impacting. And so Anchor revised the matrix. That's what's in your staff report as the attachment, and basically shows, who's the sponsor, signatory agencies, how the program is developed, works, monitoring. The big issue with the ILF program and in lieu fee program is, according to Anchor, and they've worked on several, it takes several years to implement because it takes a lot of negotiating with regulatory agencies and NGOs, non-governmental organizations, to put in place, which costs money. And the money that it cost, he estimated, was several $100,000, probably $200,000 to $300,000 to hire consultants to put such a program in place, and then ongoing management and maintenance of that program. Somebody has to be responsible for it. In other words, if project proponent Joe has an impact of X on eelgrass, and that means his in lieu fee is $50,000. Great for Joe. He pays $50,000. He's happy with that. Doesn't have to own an eelgrass bed forever. He just pays to an in lieu fee program, and then the in lieu fee program manager, i.e. the city of Morro Bay, has to take that $50,000 and then go to the regulators and say, well, this is what we're going to do with that $50,000, and it may be that we could just pay the NEP to go do the good things they do, or we could go mitigate something else, or create some eelgrass habitat or whatever, and then we'd be the owners of the mitigation and responsible for maintaining it over the years. So that too wouldn't be simple or probably not inexpensive. So given that, and if you look in your staff report in the discussion section, there's sort of three things I outlined. In my last discussion with Jack at Anchor QEA, it's his considered opinion that really our three viable options are, given what we've tried to do with the NEP and our original plan to do a Morro Bay specific plan, sort of trying to model maybe something what Newport Beach did. It's their considered opinion. Really, the three viable alternatives are an in lieu fee program per the existing federal regulation, It'd take up to 3 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. Establish an eelgrass mitigation bank program. We actually took a run at one of those 15 years ago that was not successful. I don't know the exact reasons why, but it was not cheap, but it ultimately did not gain regulatory approval. That would also likely cost hundreds of thousands and be a pretty substantial effort to prosecute. Jack's opinion of it was it's kind of like taking a howitzer to a shooting gallery at a carnival. It's just overkill. You'd be spending so much time and money for something that would just hardly get used or not get used enough to make the bang worth the buck unless you just got money to burn, so it didn't make sense. And then his third alternative was approach our Army Corps of Engineers. They're the main, and National Marine Fisheries Service, but primarily Army Corps regulatory folks with some creative solutions. As we discussed in our last meeting with Anchor and the NEP a few months ago, as you remember, Lynn, Kathy Novak, who's a consultant here in town that does a lot of the waterfront projects, was successful in getting the Army Corps and National Marine Fisheries to buy off on sort of a one-off in lieu project on one of her projects on the waterfront. I'm not sure exactly which one. And basically, there was an in lieu fee paid without having an in lieu fee program in place, which is typically how in lieu programs work. There has to be an established program. There isn't one currently here, but the Army Corps agreed to do it on this one-off basis for this one project. I'm not sure where the in lieu fees went or where they're proposed to go, but it's not part of an overall ILF program. But they basically said, don't come back for more because we're just letting you do this one time because it's a very unique situation. So Jack's recommendation was, let's go to, meaning he would help facilitate, let's go to Army Corps and not necessarily go back and say, well, you let Kathy do it, so let us do it some more, but maybe go a little more subtly and see if they're willing to entertain other potential creative in lieu-ish or other programs that could potentially give us some relief, and see what Army Corps' recommendation is moving forward to see if they have any bright ideas. And so that's where I last left it with Jack and Anchor QEA.
So with that, where are we? I mean, I look at this matrix that you have here, and this I recognize is the in lieu fee program. Under implementation, it still lists the NEP to develop programs, implement compensation projects, to do the annual monitoring, and then to prepare reports, which are then passed to the city, and the city does whatever they do with them, and then send them on to the regulatory agencies. So there's not a whole lot of difference regarding NEP on this matrix compared to the first one.
Well, I think where the difference is the city is ultimately responsible to the regulatory agencies. And I think Lexi, at her last time she came to us, mentioned this, in that where the devil's going to be in the details in terms of the NEP's participation in this project is the NEP's MOU with the city and how they're going to participate with us and being an in lieu money receiver. Mm-hmm. And they're going to take the position that Lexi has outlined, that they're not going to enter an MOU with the city that puts them on the hook for being responsible for the positive outcome of something or regulatorily responsible. They're going to still take a role. They'll take a role, but they'll only take a role that basically receive money to go towards their projects, but not have any kind of performance standards put on them. So it's still, I think, very limited, even though they, like you point out, it puts them in a responsibility role, but the devil's going to be in that MOU details. And they're not going to put themselves on a responsibility hook just like they didn't want to in the original program.
Okay. And the second part is, if we're not really going to do an in lieu fee program, what you're talking about now is going to the Army Corps and putting out feelers to find out what other kinds of things we might do. So we're not really talking anymore about the in lieu fee program, which, given the cost estimate from Anchor, is out of reach anyway.
Correct. And I didn't ask Jack at Anchor to, hey, can you work me up a formal proposal for an in lieu fee program so I've got an actual number. I mean, I'm trusting him that he's done enough of these, that he's got enough experience that when he tells me it's $200,000, it's going to be $200,000.
And even if it were half that much, it is still beyond the budget that we've just been talking about.
Right. So I think where we are is, and Jack is willing to move forward and help us along and facilitate these meetings with Army Corps. They're in Ventura. Army Corps Regulatory is in Ventura, which is where he lives and where his office is. He works out of a home office and I think goes once a week down to Mission Viejo, where the corporate office is, and shows them that he's still around. But he's willing to go in with us to Army Corps because it's in his backyard, and see where Army Corps may be with, and see if they've got any creative solutions or any other ideas that they may be willing to move forward on, and we see what the results of those are. And one of two things will happen there. Corps will say, sure, yeah, we can do A, B, or C, and here's how we do that, and this is what it would look like, and we can bring that back and bring it back to the committee and the HAB and see where it goes. Or they could say, no, you're stuck with the in lieu fee program or mitigation of the existing eelgrass mitigation program, and we're only going to entertain those. And we bring that back and back to the HAB, and ultimately we decide if it's the former, where there's some potential options. We continue to explore those options, and those options might mean hiring Anchor to go do some more real work and not just going to a meeting or two with us. And so we can see where that goes and see where the HAB wants to go with that. And if Corps says, no, you've got to stick with the existing program, then really all we've got is, ultimately to put this one to bed, whether there's some options from Corps or not. We go back to council and let's say there's the options. Okay, we need to spend X amount of dollars with a consultant or two to move this process forward. Do you want to go forward with that, council? And council will make that decision. Or if Corps says, nope, you got to stick with the program, then really the ILF, the in lieu fee program, is the only one out there. And we take that to council and say, well, we've run this down, council. Here's the option. Several years and several $100,000. Do we want to try and pursue this? And as we've spoken previously on this, really the only way anything that would ever move forward is if we could somehow find some grant funding for it.
Right.
That's where I think we're at. So I'm recommending or moving or leaning towards taking Anchor up on their offer and going over to Ventura with them and doing a little road trip with them, and maybe take a member or two from the committee and go have a conversation with Corps of Engineers in Ventura. It's only a 2.5 hour drive.
And that's within the budget.
Yeah, that's what's in the budget.
That we can do.
A little bit of gas and maybe lunch. Yeah.
Well, then that's really seems to be our only next step that is affordable and potentially valuable. Any comments from the rest of the board?
In an in lieu program, I want to make sure I'm clear what we're doing, is that the developer would end up paying a fee in lieu of doing particular testing, et cetera. Is that correct?
In lieu of doing his own mitigation project.
Okay. And the fee that he would probably be paying would be less than his own mitigation project?
It may be, but part of the reason for doing that is that you would turn the mitigation project itself over to another agency, i.e. the NEP, which has specific expertise in doing mitigation, and it would have a bay-wide view of mitigation projects. So right now, each individual does his own mitigation. So that means you have one very small project that he's doing in order to mitigate for the eelgrass he's had an impact on. And it does not look at a big picture.
Would the process be faster than going through your own mitigation process?
Faster? No, but it would be in part pre-planned. The NEP already does mitigation, already does transplanting of eelgrass, and does other things that could benefit eelgrass.
I mean, faster for the developer is what I was indicating.
Oh, it would be...
In terms of approval processes, et cetera?
If you had the in lieu fee program, yes, because he would sort of just buy into it.
Lynn,
He would,
Lynn,
yes.
Currently, there is no mitigation policy. I mean, there is a policy, but there's no way to mitigate.
Yeah,
Well, that's true.
the reason, the background for this, the city council last year tasked the Harbor Advisory Board with developing, that was the word they used, a City of Morro Bay eelgrass mitigation plan to facilitate reasonable development along the city's waterfront. That's what started this process.
So currently, if you have a eelgrass growing on a waterfront lease site, you cannot mitigate it. If you go through the process where you think there is no eelgrass, and you've gone through maybe 2 years of permitting, and you come down to pre-construction survey, and you find eelgrass there, then there's no way to mitigate it. So you're stuck. So, and eelgrass is growing, it's not growing, whatever. So we need some kind of vehicle to proceed ahead in maintaining the waterfront. So.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, that's about all I've got. So I said, unless everybody starts shaking their heads east-west, I think get back with Anchor and see if I can set something up here in the near future and get to Ventura and just see where the Corps is at on it. Then we'll bring it back to future HAB meeting and proceed accordingly.
Okay, you set?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Now we have C4, which is an update on the Harbor Department lease management policy process. To remind the public, two of our Harbor Advisory Board members, Cherise Hansen and Mark Blackford, are on that on the city's working group. So please, give us an update.
Okay, well, the lease management update group met today at 1 o'clock, so I got some fresh information. We are primarily concentrating on the portion of the lease policy that refers to fair market rent. So it's also going over what base rent would be, the types of percentages for ground leases and for building leases would be, and then the types of businesses, whether they're a regular retail, restaurant, multi-use, revenue-generating business, or if it's a nonprofit, public benefit entity, or if it's a government entity. And so we've broken it down into mostly doing research right now to get more of an idea between what fair market is, what's the going rate, how do they deal with these percentages, and we've gone all up and down the coast. The last period of time, we spent majority of it looking up north in areas like Monterey, and I have a list. of all the other areas, looking up at Eureka and San Francisco. And I've even done a lot of I tried to do a lot of research up in Washington and Oregon. And what we have found is that currently our policy is kind of right there with a lot of other things. What I've noticed personally is that every different region has their own kind of vision statements like we do and goals that they want to achieve. And their leases kind of reflect that they want more jobs in that particular area, or they need more public benefit types of things, or fishing interests in it, that they want to make sure that whatever they promote in that area, they think about when they're doing their lease policies. So currently we have gone off on our own again to concentrate more heavily on the southern regions. And so we've been dished out each specific one so we can come back to the table discussing all the different types of methodology that they used in their deciding of fair market rent percentages, and a lot of things that we have going on with nonprofits and vacancies on our waterfront. And so that will be, our next meeting is April 25th, and we'll discuss that.
Does the Morro Bay group's mission statement have firmly embedded in it that the goal would be to fund the infrastructure in the harbor? Because you rattled off a number of goals, or I should say you described to us, I mean that in a positive way, you described to us that other communities have a focus in their mission statement, and nowhere in any of those did I hear revenue per se. And in the case of Morro Bay, the way the arrangement currently works is that the monies that are collected from the Tidelands Trust lands are the ones that fund the Harbor Department's operation, and in a perfect world would maintain and replace the capital improvements as well.
The specific question that you had.
Is that goal firm? Does that, in your opinion, or in your work, do you find that goal is firmly embedded in the Morro Bay Working Group's mission statement?
In the lease policy statement, or just like the?
What's the mission statement? What is that? You've referred consistently, thank you, consistently in the reports, you've referred to a mission statement. This working group has a mission statement. What is that?
Eric, would you like to
Why
answer
is
that?
Would you like to phone a friend?
Please.
To answer your question, right, yes. I wished I would have brought the folder with me. I didn't, but yes, in the mission statement, there is reference to revenue generation being a priority. I can't say that it specifically says to fund infrastructure and other things, but I think it does. We've danced around that quite a bit, and we do mention revenue generation being a big focus and making sure revenues are maximized, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, that mission statement will come filter through the HAB, and when we get to a point where I think we've got enough sort of critical mass to bring to the HAB for, okay, let's check in with this stuff and get the box checked for the HAB, okay, on this stuff, we'll bring it in, including the mission statement where we are today, and that way we can put that aside and move on to the next section.
Maybe I'm confused, and that's what I was trying to find out in a very inelegant way. What is the purpose of the mission? Is the mission statement tied to the lease management policy, or is the mission statement tied to the work of this working group as it?
The mission statement is part of the lease management policy.
Thank you.
It is the preamble, or whatever you want to call it, to the lease
you.
policy.
Got it. Got it.
Our group doesn't have a mission statement.
No, our
in and
group
of
doesn't
itself.
have one, but it is unique to see the differences in percentages that I'm seeing and the way that they establish their base rents. It typically follows what that particular area's mission statement is. So if they're trying to generate jobs, they're giving better rates to those particular places that are going to be more manufacturing. If if something that's really important to us is to increase our TOT, then every lease will respond in that way. Each individual as well, but it's something that goes into what the final decision is of how they figure out their percentages and base rents.
Oh, that's helpful and interesting. Thank you.
Hey, you want a draft mission statement? Lori, we actually were calling it a vision statement. Positive cash flow to the Harbor Department is crucial to maintain the integrity of the Embarcadero and environmental health of the bay and its resources. In order to provide a quality experience for the public, tourism, use of Embarcadero incurs and lease management decisions. Yeah, we mentioned revenue generation. Then we've got a policy, purpose and benefits statement stuff as well there that mentions revenue generation. So yeah, it's got that in there. Like I say, we'll circle back with that at some point for the HAB stamp of approval.
And is it going to be acknowledged, or is it already acknowledged in the lease policy, the connection between the legal requirement that the revenue from the Tidelands Trust lands go for the benefit of the harbor?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Shouldn't that?
I mean, it may not state it exactly like that, but yes.
In the very beginning and
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, good point. We've got.
I appreciate that it's in background. That's comforting, but necessary, but perhaps not sufficient, because this is if I understand with the purpose of the lease management policy, this is a city of Morro Bay fiscal planning tool. And I think it's worthwhile for all of us to remind ourselves what the money's supposed to be used for.
So when we bring this back to the HAB, we can delve into this discussion much deeper and make sure we've got what we want to capture in here. The last assignment we had was looking at fair market value issues. The groups did a fair amount of homework, and after today's meeting, we decided we want to do some more, because fair market value or fair market rent, whatever you want to call it, is pretty important, and it's not the easiest to get data from other entities that have similar properties. So we think it's important that we get it right. And looking at commercial leases versus nonprofits versus government, there's some nuances there. So we're going to spend a little more time on it. Once we get to that point, I'm not sure exactly what's next on the list, but that may be a good point to bring back through the HAB. Okay, this is the documents we want to get HAB's final input and or approval or recommendations on, and then move that into the folder and be able to move on to the next section. So that's probably not too far off.
Gene?
So will it come back and will we be discussing the mission statement?
In the March 13th.
The reason I'm asking is I think that lease side management should be maybe more than just physical revenue generating. And there might be some other public benefits that you guys could be able to do. So, if your lease side expires and you've already done everything you can, what else can you do? So maybe there's some public benefits you can do, or increase your rent or something like that. But I want to be sure that's included in your mission statement.
So when we bring it back, so we brought it back. We had it in the HAB at the special meeting in
Yeah, last
March?
meeting. Yeah, it's
That,
right
I
here
didn't
in
bring
the
that
booklet.
back specifically to take HAB input. I just brought it back. Hey, here's where we're at. We will be bringing the mission statement, or vision statement, we call it, and all the other work products to date back to the HAB for the full discussion on, okay, do we have everything we need to have? And at that point, we'll be able to, all the little missing tidbits you think they're missing, we can consider those then. So yes, it all will come back.
Okay. Anything else on C4? Okay, so that brings us to declaration of future agenda items. Would anybody like to add anything to our future agenda items? Anybody want to nominate an item? Apparently not. Okay, then that takes us to adjournment, unless there's anything else. Anything else relative to the agenda, tonight's agenda? Ma'am? No? Okay. Motion to adjourn.
I hereby move to adjourn.
Second? Mr. O'Brien seconded. So all in favor? Aye? Aye. Opposed? None? Carries. Thank you. Thank you very much.